Is shocking a dog 273 times in 90 seconds a cure for fear? Is that a training breakthrough or is that abuse? I'm Will Bangura. I'm a certified canine behaviorist, a force free positive reinforcement trainer. I specialize in working with dogs that have extreme fears, phobias, anxiety, and extreme reactivity and aggression. Now, I've not always been a force free trainer. I've been training dogs for a half century, 50 years, 37 of those years professionally. Many of those decades, I was a balanced trainer. Many of those decades, I used electronic collars, shock collars, e collars, stim collars, whatever you want to call it. Today, I don't use aversives. Today, I don't use those tools. I only use positive reinforcement. I'm going to let you watch about 90 seconds of a video that was sent to me by another person. They wanted me to analyze this video, comment on this video. Let's have you watch this. We'll watch the first 90 seconds of this where the dog's getting pretty much trained and just shocked the entire time. And then I will go ahead and I will comment on that. Let's start from the beginning. By the way, every time you hear a tone, beep, 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 that's the dog getting a shock. There is a sound box that has been synced up with the electronic collar so that you can know when the shocks are happening. All throughout the 90 seconds, the trainer is continuously turning up the dial, making the shocks more and more painful. So here we go. 5, some even further down. Go back down. Better. Still tough for her. Still going to her comfort zone. I want to get through this. She's got her spot. Not having to get any closer. Yes, moderately. I'm going to ask for more because I can tell what she can do. Of course, she's going to make whatever feels like the easiest move to relieve pressure. Here. This is way harder pressure, but I want to see what she can do. All right, so let's break this down. Again, 273 shocks in about 90 seconds. Is that a training breakthrough or is that abuse? What are you seeing in the video here? Are you seeing the dog's body language? Can you tell that this is a fearful dog? Can you see that the dog is experiencing a lot of fear, anxiety, and stress? Oftentimes, the tail is tucked, the dog's head is down, the dog is cowering. The dog is trying to avoid the trainer, going left, going right, shutting down by laying down when the trainer tries to force the dog into the trainer. The dog keeps turning around. You're also seeing that when the dog is not coming in completely straight, like the trainer would like, throughout the minute and a half, the trainer constantly, many times, turns up the stimulation on the e-collar, making the shocks more and more painful. Let's go back to the beginning of the video. I'm going to comment on it. I'm going to be starting, stopping, pausing, and commenting. Here we go. 5, some even further down. Now, hopefully, you're seeing the fearful body language, the head down, the cowering, many times the tail being tucked. Right there, the trainer actually was looking at the dial and had turned up the electronic collar, watched the trainer's hands. Right there. He's got his finger, his index finger, his thumb on the dial. He turned it up. A lot of people might not see that. If you're not experienced using electronic collars, and I've used that exact collar many, many times on many, many dogs, so I know when it's being turned up. The other subtlety is that the sound box that's synced up with the electronic collar, the higher the setting is on the electronic collar, the louder the sound box is. And I know it's a little subtle. I've got a headset on, so I'm hearing those sounds maybe a little bit clearer than folks that are not listening to this with headphones. But it's continuing to get higher and higher. There again, the dog's turning away, cowering, head down, tail tucked, trying to avoid the person. This is a dog that's afraid of people. The last thing it wants to do is come to a person. This dog's actually afraid of the male pet parent, doesn't want to come to them as well. Right there, trainer is turning up the dial. It's got its thumb and index finger on the dial, turning that up. Dog's tail is tucked. Again, more fearful body language, stressful body language.
Roll back down.
Trainer's turning up the dial again because the dog keeps shutting down. The trainer's goal is to get the dog to come in because this is a dog that's been afraid to come to people. This trainer's trying to show how quickly an electronic collar can get results, that very quickly he can get results of getting the dog to come into him when the dog didn't want to come in before. Well, this dog still does not want to come to him. Otherwise, the dog would not be avoiding him. The dog would not be shutting down, lying down, turning away. And if it was willingly coming into the trainer wouldn't keep turning up the intensity of the electronic collar by making it more painful.
Better. Still tough for her. Still going to her comfort zone.
Again, he keeps turning up the dial. The dog keeps avoiding him. You know, the dog's in a lose lose situation. On the one hand, it's afraid of people, it sees people as scary. So it doesn't want to go towards a person. It's trying to get away, it's trying to avoid them to feel safe. However, when the dog makes the choice to feel safe, when the dog makes the choice to move away, then painful things happen. So the trainer here is doing two things. It's forcing the dog to go into him, validating the dog's unrealistic perception that people are scary. Why is it validating it? Because rather than taking a slow approach, rather than pairing positive reinforcement with what the dog views as scary, none of that's being done. The dog is just flooded, being forced to go into the trainer. And again, it's a lose lose situation. The dog is damned if it does, damned if it doesn't, scared to go towards people, being forced to go towards people, trying to get away. But when it goes away, now pain happens. The more it tries to get away, the more painful it is. So, this trainer, rather than fixing a dog that is fearful, is flooding the dog, overwhelming the dog with its fear, rather than desensitizing the dog to the fear with positive reinforcement. And on top of that, the dog already equals fear with people. Now the trainer is layering on top of that fear pain. The dog is learning that people cause pain. People are scary and people cause pain. That is being taught by the trainer. It's classical conditioning, associative learning, and this dog is pairing two things, people and pain. And that's what's happening. And what you're going to see is what may appear to the uneducated, untrained eye, a dog that may become relaxed, may become calm, where the stress dissipates. That's what the trainer is going to try to sell in this video to the people at this workshop. That's what this trainer is going to sell in this video for people watching it. He's going to say that because of the electronic collar, things happened very quickly. The dog was able to come into him. And granted, the dog doesn't love it, but the level of stress is just like nothing. It's minimal and it's no big deal. Now, that's what the trainer is going to try to sell you on. What I'm telling you is that that's not what's happening here. That's not the science of what's happening here. This is a dog that emotionally gets shut down. This is a dog, you can go into fight or flight, right? And this dog's strategy is to go into flight, but there's other strategies, and that's freeze. When you can't go into fight or flight, and this dog is not one to fight, at least not yet, when you can't get away, and it's impossible no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try to get away from what you're afraid of, it gets more and more painful. And again, 273 shocks in 90 seconds, the dog shuts down emotionally. Let's watch some more. There, the trainer turned up the collar again. Look at the disempowered body language. Look how fearful the dog is, how the dog is crouched down, the tail completely tucked, ears backed, again, trying to avoid the trainer. And there, the dog just shuts down completely, lies down, trying to make things stop, the pain stop. And the trainer here again, turning up the dial on the electronic collar. Let's continue.
Want to get through this?
Now, I don't know if you heard what the trainer just said there. Let's go back just a little bit. The trainer's going to turn up the dial, watch a trainer's hand, watch the remote, and the trainer's going to say, I want to get through this. Trainer's getting frustrated. He's 44 seconds into training this dog, and the trainer is getting impatient and frustrated. And that's one of the biggest reasons why trainers like to use the shock collar. They feel that they can get instant results, even though those results are very misleading. All this is doing is suppressing behavior. This dog is not happy. It's not calm. It's not relaxed. Nothing has changed. The dog is still scared to death of people. That has never been changed. That's the real problem that drives the avoidance behavior. As a behaviorist, as a force-free positive reinforcement trainer, we're interested in dealing with the underlying root cause, which is the dog's fear. It's the fear that's driving that behavior. You change the fear, you change that dog's underlying conditioned emotional response and association that people are scary with one of good things happen when I see people. When you use positive reinforcement, that avoidance behavior goes away. When you use punishment, when you use negative reinforcement, when you use aversives, you can shut down that avoidance behavior, and you can force a dog with enough fear, pain, and intimidation to move in any direction that you force the dog. But that doesn't mean that the dog is willing to do it. It doesn't mean the dog feels good about doing it. It doesn't mean that the dog has changed its feelings or perceptions about people being scary. It just means the dog has no choice. Now, that puts a fearful dog, in what I call a pressure cooker effect, because we haven't changed the underlying emotional state. And all that's been done here is suppressing of behavior. This dog is shut down. It's not allowed to communicate that it's fearful. It's not allowed to try to get away because it's fearful. It's being forced to stay there, forced to get closer, or experience higher levels, more and more painful shocks. So the dog is given up. The illusion is the dog is complied, the dog is relaxed, the dog is calm. That's the furthest thing from the truth. Now, being in this pressure cooker effect, eventually, because that fear doesn't go away, it builds, it builds, it builds, and builds, it builds. And when the dog feels it can't get away because it's going to experience more painful shocks for longer duration, many dogs, eventually, over time, will go from flight to fight or from frozen to fight because it's the only way they can get away. It's the only way they can escape what they're afraid of. It's the only way they can escape the pain. I get calls each and every day from people with dogs just like this one that have used electronic collars, have used trainers that use electronic collars. They tell me everything looked great for the first couple of weeks or the first month or two. But again, they were fooled by this as well. They think that a dog with suppressed behavior, a shutdown dog, is a dog that's calm and relaxed, when in fact, those same dogs, after 2 weeks to 2 months, became much more fearful and oftentimes became aggressive. Now, this dog being afraid of its male pet parent, they're going to be asked by this trainer to duplicate what he's doing over and over and over and over. So, what's going to happen? The dog is afraid of the male pet parent, wants to get away. The dog will be forced to go to the male pet parent, increasing the dog's fear, and they're going to be using pain to make that happen, pain from the shock collar. So, again, the dog already associates the male pet parent as scary. Now they're going to layer pain on top of that. The male pet parent's going to equal pain as well. Dogs like this, after a while, they can't take it anymore and they may bite. And oftentimes they do. And that's where the aggression starts to come in. This is a big, powerful dog. If it wants to bite, it could do a lot of damage. It's a Belgian Malinois. And if that were to happen, it's possible that the dog could be euthanized. And what's really sad is that almost all balanced trainers, rather than use force-free, positive reinforcement, methods that work, counter conditioning and desensitization that really fix this problem, they'd rather a dog be euthanized than to use force-free positive reinforcement methods. Let's continue with the video.
I want to get through this.
Okay, that's where he said it. I want to get through this. Again, he's in a hurry to get through this, so he turned up the intensity of the shock collar again.
She's got her.
All right, right there, the dog shut down again, lied down, avoiding the trainer. Once again, look at the trainer's hand, the remote, the dial. The trainer is going to make the shock collar more painful again, and the trainer's only spent 55 seconds working with the dog.
She's got her spot.
Throughout that entire sequence, as soon as you started hearing the tones, beep, 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 and remember, every tone, every beep is a shock. From the time it started until the dog got all the way around him, the trainer had his thumb and index finger on the dial and was turning up the intensity the entire time. It got to the point where the shock was so high, it caused a pretty severe muscle contraction of the neck, and you see the neck twitch where you didn't see that before. So let me just bring it back a little bit. Watch the trainer dial it up and watch the dog come around and experience that very painful shock that causes that pretty violent muscle contraction. See, that's what I was talking about, and that's typical. Balanced trainers that use shock collars will always say, "Hey, listen, it's not the tool; it's how you use the tool. And if you know what you're doing with an electronic collar, it's safe, it doesn't hurt, doesn't cause any problems." And they'll always say, "We use very low level." They use a level that's painful. They use a level that's painful enough to force the dog to do what they want. And when the dog won't do it at the level they're at, they keep making it more painful. That's exactly what's happening in this video. That's exactly what you're seeing. I'm not some positive reinforcement, force-free trainer who has never, ever, ever used punishment. I'm not one who's never, ever, ever used negative reinforcement. I'm not one that's never used an electronic collar. I use these tools for decades. I've been on both sides, been on the balance training side using aversives like shock collars, and I'm on the now force-free total positive reinforcement side. So I can tell you exactly what's going on here. There again, the dog continues to shut down emotionally, lying down. Cannot escape this. Either way, it's doomed. Can't get away. I'm afraid. I don't want to be here. But if I do, more and more shocks, more and more painful. Right there, again, the trainer keeps turning up the dial. So this myth about we use very low level stimulation, no. And the numbers are irrelevant. Doesn't matter. Look, the only way the collar works, it has to get to a certain level of pain for the dog to respond. If it doesn't get to that certain level of pain, the dog doesn't respond. So pain is pain is pain. Every dog's pain level might be a little bit different, but it's still pain. And he's not getting the results he's looking for. So the go-to with these trainers is let's make it more painful. Now, they won't say that. They won't tell you that. But I'm telling you, as somebody that has done this for decades, that's what's going on. And it's not just this trainer, it's all of them. All of them. Again, because the dog turned away, because the dog did not come in all the way, the trainer went ahead and turned up the intensity of the collar again. You can see him doing that if you look at his hand, you look at the remote.
Of course, she's going to make whatever feels like the easiest move to relieve pressure. Here. This is way harder pressure, but
Now, I don't know if you heard that. He said, of course, she's going to do whatever she needs to do to get away from pressure. Go here, go here, go here. Then he goes back to the remote, the trainer, turns up the dial. He goes, now, this is way harder pressure, but I want to see what she can do. So again, the strategy here, the method is just keep increasing the pain. Keep forcing the dog to do what it doesn't want to do.
I want to see what she can do.
Now, that was the exact same clip that the trainer went ahead and edited and showed twice. He wanted you to see the dog lying down and putting its head and neck on the dog's leg. The impression, or what he's trying to convey, is look how quickly it's been 1.5 minutes, been about 90 seconds. Look how quickly this incredible tool, this e-collar, was able to get the dog who didn't want to come to me to come to me. And now the dog has gotten so relaxed, so calm, it's no big deal. The dog just laid down, even put its head, even put its neck on my leg. And unfortunately, this is all smoke and mirrors. This is not a relaxed dog. This is not a calm dog. This is not a dog that was able to do this. The dog did not willingly come to him. It was all done through fear, pain, intimidation, force, and continuous shocking 273 times over 90 seconds. And those shocks continuously kept getting more and more and more painful.
Using food over an extended period of time. Everybody's, I'm sure.
Now, notice the dog turning away. The dog's looking at the female pet parent because it's like, please save me, get me the heck out of here. The trainer's talking about, now, we've all heard about using food. We're all familiar with those protocols. What he's talking about is the gold standard, the way that things are done with force-free positive reinforcement training, counter conditioning, and desensitization, where you pair positive reinforcement with what the dog fears. In this case, in most cases, it's going to be food. You've got to find the food that the dog absolutely loves. The higher the value of the food, the quicker it goes as far as pairing positive things with what the dog fears. Well, he's going to talk about that, but then he's going to dismiss it. And he's going to say that, yeah, I know all about that, but I just want to see what we can do with the shock collar. Everybody thinks a dog is calm.
Over an extended period of time. Everybody's, I'm sure, seen protocols for how to go about that. I just want to see what we can do without all that stuff.
Without all that stuff, he wants to see what he can do. To the uneducated, untrained eye, this is a calm dog. To the educated eye, to those of us that have a formal education in animal behavior, are certified, all the scientific literature, everything shows us that, hey, this is a dog that's in a very high level of fear and stress. This is a dog that's frozen now, frozen in panic, and is completely shut down. And unfortunately, this is misread by many quote unquote professional trainers. But what the pet parents that are watching this might not know is that the dog training industry is not regulated. Anybody can call themselves a dog trainer. There's no requirement for any formal education in animal behavior. There's no requirement for certification. There's no requirement for licensure. There's no requirement for continuing education. So anybody can do anything. And what's happening here, there is not a formally educated, legitimately certified behavior professional in the world that would do this. Now, like I said, I've done this and I don't feel good about it. I wish I could apologize to every pet parent and every dog that I did this with. But there was a time when I didn't have the education that I have today. And that's why education is so important. That's why having a formal education when you work with dogs is critical. I didn't always have the legitimate certifications that I have today. And I've got lots of different certifications. But to get them, I had to learn a lot. Knowledge is important. Real knowledge, evidence-based, science-based practices. And because I was open-minded and not closed-minded, because I was willing to always want to learn more and more and more, I understand today what's going on here. And it's sad because a lot of these dogs get really messed up. And once they get aggressive, and these tools really, for a lot of dogs, they get more aggressive, and then these dogs get euthanized. And so many balanced trainers, rather than use positive reinforcement, force-free training, what works, counter conditioning, and desensitization, before they would ever even consider that, they'd let a dog be euthanized when that doesn't have to happen. You know, there's a reason, and you might not know this, but there's a reason why electronic collars have been banned and why they're outlawed in over 20 different countries and territories. If they were safe, if they were a great tool, if they really worked, if they didn't cause damage and risk welfare to animals, if they didn't increase anxiety and stress, if they didn't increase fear, if they didn't cause aggression, there wouldn't be global consensus that they should be outlawed and banned. But that's the case. Austria, they're against the law. You can't use and train with an electronic collar. They're against the law and outlawed in Denmark. You can't use them in Finland. You can't train with an electronic collar because they're banned in France. In Germany, they're outlawed as well. Iceland, Italy, Netherlands, Norway, none of those countries you can use this tool. They're all outlawed and banned. Portugal, Slovenia, Spain, you can't use an e-collar there as well. They're outlawed and banned. Greece, Sweden, Switzerland, Wales, electronic collars are banned. They're outlawed. Scotland, England, Quebec in Canada, parts of Australia, like the Capital Territory and New South Wales and South Australia. It's against the law to use an electronic collar. They're banned. In Belgium, electronic collars are banned. You can't use them. Now, are they all crazy? Are they all wrong? Or does Michael O'Shea and other balance trainers that want to use electronic collars, are they all right? And are all those countries that did huge scientific studies and studied it before they banned it, they didn't just, willy-nilly say, hey, let's stop or not let people use electronic collars. They studied all the science. And there's an abundance of science. I mean, there's over almost 50 modern scientific studies. There's global consensus that these tools and the use of corrections, punishment, negative reinforcement, the use of prong collars, electronic collars, cause damage to dogs. In addition to that, there's no benefit. They don't train dogs faster, although that's what you hear from balance trainers, from shock collar trainers, is that it's much faster. But suppressing behavior is not modifying behavior. This is not behavior modification. This is simply punishment and suppression of behavior. And most complex behavior problems have strong emotions at their root that drive the behavior. And that's where the real work has to be. Changing the way the dog feels. If the dog's not afraid of the male pet parent, the dog will be running up for kisses and playing and treats and all that good stuff. But when you start associating pain with the pet parent, fear with pain layered on top of that fear associated with the pet parent, that dog is going to be miserable, that dog's going to be afraid, and eventually that dog usually snaps. And again, dogs like this, they get euthanized. I get calls all the time. I can't tell you how many dogs were trained with electronic collars, and the folks said, "Hey, I wish I would have met you first because maybe my dog would be alive today." Almost every veterinary behavior organization in the world has spoken out, has a position statement against the use of these tools. Um, the American College of Veterinary Behaviorists has put out a position statement. They've spoken out against the use of shock collars. The American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior, the same thing. The European Society of Veterinary Clinical Ethology, the British Veterinary Association, the British Small Animal Veterinary Association, the Australian Veterinary Association, the New Zealand Veterinary Association, the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants, the Association of Professional Dog Training International, the Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers, the Pet Professional Guild, the Animal Behavior and Training Council, the Association of Pet Behavior Counselors, the RSPCA, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, the ASPCA, the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, the Humane Society of the United States, American Humane, the National Humane Organization, Dogs Trust, the Kennel Club of the UK. All are in agreement. There's global scientific consensus that you should never use aversive tools, and positive reinforcement is the most efficient, most effective, the quickest way. And it is very effective. It deals with very complex and can deal with very complex behaviors, including aggression, reactivity, fears, and phobias. I specialize in aggression, real aggression, dogs with severe bite histories, dogs that are severely fearful and phobic. I never have to use an aversive. I can rehabilitate, turn those dogs around with great success, just using positive reinforcement, just using force-free methods. But the balance trainers, the electronic collar trainers, the shock collar trainers will tell you that, hey, it's not the tool. It's how you use the tool. And if you know how to use it, it's a great tool. It won't cause any of those problems, especially if you use it at very low level stimulation. Well, I talked about that. That's a myth. That's a misrepresentation. And we've got multiple studies that disprove that. I'll talk about those in a second, but let's continue to watch the video and listen to what this trainer has to say. Is that dog calm? Is that dog relaxed? Has the fear of people gone away magically? Or is this a dog that is shut down? Is this a dog that's frozen?
So putting on the collar has been a challenge, right?
So the trainer had taken the shock collar off the dog, and he had made a statement just now as he put it on the dog. So putting the collar on the dog has been a real challenge, right? He's saying that to the female pet parent. Now, why do you suppose it was a challenge for her to put the shock collar on the dog? Well, yeah, usually the most logical answer is what it is, Occam's razor, right? Is it possible the dog's afraid of the collar? Is it possible that the dog's afraid of the collar because it's painful? Is the dog avoiding the collar because it's painful and he's afraid of it? And is that why it's difficult to put the collar on? I've seen that happen over and over and over again. That's the most likely answer. Um, Dogs, when you bring out their regular collar and their leash, they usually get excited to have the collar go on. So when this collar comes out and the dog is fighting to have it put on, there's a reason the dog doesn't want the collar on. It's painful. The dog's afraid of it. Now, the trainer was able to very easily put the collar on. Again, he's making this statement and he's showing and demonstrating how easy it is to put the collar on as if there's been this magical breakthrough in the last 90 seconds of him shocking the dog over and over. No, the dog would normally fight and want to get away from that collar, but the dog has completely shut down. After a minute and a half of being continuously shocked, after a minute and a half of trying to get away, and no matter what it did, it kept getting shocked and it kept getting more and more painful, the dog just shut down completely. It would love to get away, but it's frozen. It knows it can't get away or it's going to be painful. So, what you're seeing here is not a relaxed, calm dog, not a dog that's compliant.
I don't expect your husband to get on the ground and do all of this stuff, but this is a building blocks approach, very preliminary stuff to try and get the dog over the pattern hump of it's way better to be away from you. And so you do this over and over and over again, and next thing the dog is like, it's not such a big deal. Well, it's going to be a process, right? Yeah. So, but the good news is that the fact that she's able to do this, like, pretty cool.
The trainer is saying, hey, the good news is that she's able to do this. It's pretty cool. The dog's not able to do anything. Did anybody see this dog willingly, without fear, pain, intimidation, willingly, without force, come to the trainer? Because what I saw in the video was a dog being shocked continuously at higher and higher levels, being forced to come to him, and the dog was trying to fight it at all costs, every step of the way, trying to move away, turn away, lay down, shut down. However, the dog had no choice because it just kept getting more and more painful. That's what I saw. And as somebody that's been on both sides, somebody who has been a shock collar trainer myself, and now a force-free total positive reinforcement trainer myself, I can tell you what's going on. I've been on both sides.
I didn't know how hard, especially putting the collar around her neck because it's super intimate, how difficult that would be.
Here's the smoke and mirrors. This is a frozen dog, not a calm dog, not a relaxed dog.
Haven't been above a level 9 or 10.
Remember, I said the numbers are irrelevant. There's only two settings on a collar, not painful and painful enough that the dog will do what you want it to do. It works by pain. The numbers are irrelevant. One dog experiences pain at 5, it's still painful. If another dog experiences pain at 50, it's still painful. And the way that these collars work, the way that the trainers work, is that they will go to the highest level or the lowest level, the level of pain that it requires to get the dog to do it. But to say that, to try to use terminology like pressure instead of pain, pressure instead of shock, low level rather than the dog's level of pain that motivates it, because that's what's really going on. That's what's really going on.
We've been using very low level pressure to reverse that perception.
There again, we've been using very low level pressure, he says, to reverse that perception. What perception? That people are scary? So we've been using electric shock to change the perception that people are scary. So we've been associating painful shock with a person. We've been layering pain over fear to change the dog's perception that people are scary. That makes absolutely no sense. No sense whatsoever. Unfortunately, he's perceived as an expert. He's perceived as a professional. People watching his videos will believe this and shake their head and nod okay, even though they don't know what they don't know. People in that workshop, that seminar are going to go along with this. And that's why the dog training industry so desperately needs to be regulated. It is time for dog trainers to be required to be licensed. It is time for dog trainers to be required to have a real formal education in animal behavior. It is time for dog trainers to have legitimate certifications where they can prove that the formal education that they received, they know what they're talking about, and they need to be required to have continuing education, just like doctors, just like nurses, just like veterinarians, so that the public, consumers, pet parents can have assurances that the best practices, evidence-based, science-based practices are being used with their dogs, that what a professional is doing is actually helping their dog and not hurting the dog. Because this is happening all across the country. This is happening all across the world. And I can't tell you, it's not just myself, but the many, many thousands of legitimate, certified, formally educated, positive reinforcement, force-free trainers that are doing amazing work with severely aggressive dogs, that are doing amazing work with extremely fearful, phobic dogs, turning them around, giving them confidence, joy, all throughout that time, just using positive reinforcement.
I'd love everybody to put it to themselves. Do you think if I just had a leash and a prong, or a leash and a martingale, and I sat here or walked around and did all the same stuff, but without the e-collar, without the neutrality of the e-collar, and just pulled her into my space, if we would get the same reaction? That's the question that you really should ask yourself.
So basically, he's selling the audience, those in the workshop, those watching his video. Look how fast the e-collar made this happen. Would you have gotten this kind of a result using tools other than an e-collar? Well, what's your criteria? What's a result? If it means that forcing a dog through fear, pain, and intimidation, masking the behavior, never dealing with the underlying emotional state that drives that behavior, yeah, I guess this is pretty quick. But nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. And later tonight, this dog's not going to willingly start running up to people, including its pet parent. This is all smoke and mirrors, folks.
It's the reason why when we work with fearful dogs, which we work with a lot of, I always start off when they're super fearful with this process, because
that is so scary. He says he works with lots of fearful dogs. He uses this with all fearful dogs. This is how he starts out all fearful dogs, with this process.
Dogs that are in this space, they don't want your praise, they don't want your affection, they don't want food, they don't want toys,
they don't want your food, they don't want your affection, they don't want your toys, they don't want to play, they don't want to listen to your cues and commands. When you have flooded them, when you have got them so close to the trigger that they're afraid of, yeah, they're going to shut down. That's not how you rehabilitate things. If a person has a phobia of spiders, you don't put a million tarantulas in an empty pool and throw that person in the pool and expect them to get over that fear. That's called flooding. All right. As I mentioned earlier, the gold standard using positive reinforcement, force-free training, is counter conditioning and desensitization. The dog is afraid of a trigger. Get them at a safe distance, whatever that distance is, and start pairing positive reinforcement with the presentation of the person. You do that over and over. The dog's perception truly changes because you've paired something good, something the dog likes, something wonderful, something happy, something positive with what the dog previously was afraid of. Now, Michael O'Shea is saying that he's changing the perception of the dog using the electronic collar. But then he's going to say, well, if you know what you're doing and it's low level. Well, many, many studies were done. We've got multiple studies that were done where we compared the two kinds of training. Dogs trained with electronic collars versus dogs trained with positive reinforcement. Okay. Now, here's the kicker. In those studies, they used very low level electrical stimulation with the electronic collars, right? So as Michael's saying, hey, we're just using real low level pressure. In the studies, they used low level pressure, okay? Michael says, if you know what you're doing. Well, in those studies, the trainers that were using the electronic collars were industry experts. They were selected by the Electronic Collar Manufacturers Association. So what they did was they took the trainers who were the absolute best at knowing how to use an electronic collar at very low levels. What do you suppose the results were? Let me tell you what the results were with those studies. The dogs trained with the electronic collars showed higher levels of stress and anxiety versus the dogs trained with purely positive reinforcement, force-free methods. The dogs trained with low-level e-collar stimulation by industry e-collar experts, those dogs needed more commands given to them before they responded and gave the behavior the trainer was looking for. The dogs trained with purely positive force-free methods needed less commands to respond behaviorally with what the command was that was given. The dogs in the electronic collar training group, when they were given a command, it took those dogs longer to comply and respond to the command. The dogs that were trained in the force-free total positive reinforcement group, they responded almost immediately when they were given the command or cue the first time. They responded faster. They responded with less commands. They had less stress signals in their body language. And then also in this study, they took salivary samples. Why? Because they wanted to check for cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. What they found was the dogs that were trained with low-level e-collar stimulation by industry experts who were expertly trained how to use the e-collar, those dogs had higher levels of the stress hormone cortisol than the dogs trained with positive reinforcement. So there's no benefit to using an electronic collar. Doesn't train a dog faster, doesn't make them more efficient, doesn't help you to give less cues or commands. But what we do know, based on almost 50 modern scientific research studies that are peer-reviewed, that this tool increases anxiety, increases fear, increases stress, oftentimes leads to aggression. Tell me what you think. I've been on both sides. I've done it both ways. You've heard what I have to say. I want to now hear from you. Post your comments down below. If you're a force-free positive reinforcement trainer, especially if you work with dogs that are fearful or reactive and aggressive, talk to me about the success that you've had turning those behaviors around using force-free positive reinforcement methods. If you're a balance trainer or if you're a trainer that uses electronic collars, talk to me about what do you think about what I've said? What do you think about what you watched? Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm somewhere in the middle? If you're a pet parent, please know that you never have to use force. You never have to use a correction. You never have to use punishment. It's not just me saying it, and I've done both. It's me along with over 50 peer-reviewed scientific studies that all have the same consensus. It's myself and all of the major veterinary behavior organizations that are all in consensus. It's me as well as all of the 20-some countries that have outlawed and banned electronic collars. It's myself and the many, many dog training and animal behavior organizations. It's myself and all the many animal welfare organizations across the world that are all in consensus. But the problem that we have today is that the balance trainers, the trainers that want to use the electronic collars, it's fast. It's in their best economic interest to be able to do things very quickly, get another customer, get more money, all at the cost and the welfare of the dogs, rather than take a little bit more time, perhaps, rather than using love, kindness, patience, positive reinforcement. They put your dog at risk. This is why the dog training industry is not regulated. The positive reinforcement, force-free trainers have been advocating for licensure, for mandatory certification, for mandatory continuing education, making sure that what we're doing is in the best interest of your dog and its welfare. There's only one group that's against that, and that's the balance trainers. It's time for you, the pet parent, for you, the consumer, to say no to training with pain. It's time for you, the pet parent, the consumer, to say no to shock collars, no to prong collars. If any trainer tells you that positive reinforcement doesn't work, that you have to use corrections, I'm going to tell you right here, as somebody who's been training for a half century, who has done it both ways, since I crossed over and no longer use corrections, punishment, no longer use electronic collars or prong collars, only use positive reinforcement, force-free methods, I have never needed to use a correction. There has not been a case, and I deal with severe aggression, severe bite histories, severe fearful and phobic dogs. I am having incredible success each and every day, turning those dogs around completely without the use of aversives. They're unnecessary. It doesn't need to be done. This is dangerous. Please share this video. Put your comments down below. Be nice to one another. There was a time when I did this. I didn't know what I didn't know. It didn't make me a bad person. It just made me somebody that didn't have the knowledge. Now, it's one thing when you've got somebody that just puts the blinders on and they don't want to learn. They've just shut down, they're so narrow-minded that they don't want to take in any new information. And there are people that are out there like that. Not everybody's like me and some of the other crossover trainers that, are lifelong learners that, believe that information is power. Anyway, this has gone longer than I would have liked it to. I've tried to do this and really shrink it down, but I just have not been able to do that. I apologize. I'm a little long-winded, but please comment below. Please share this with others. Until next time, I'm Will Bangura. Have a great day, everybody.